Hey guys, welcome back. It's Josh with the Financial Advisor Car Guy. This week I wanted to chat a little bit with you guys about modifications to vehicles and their usability and functionality. And, because far too often I see people with useless mods on their vehicle. And useless, please know this is an objective episode. This is going to be a lot of my opinions, and, my opinions have changed over time. So, I think about people who wrap their cars, right? Whether it's a full wrap, whether it's, whatever it is. In my mind, that's sort of a useless mod. All it does is change the color of your car. But inversely, it is protecting the paint, and there is some functionality to it. So again, subjective. That's not where I'm going with that. I wanted to talk about more common modifications that people do on their cars. Think of, window tint, think of wheels and tires, think of suspension, those types of modifications. And, when it comes to window tint, I'll just start with that, right? There's a lot of usable reasons why people tint their windows. Maybe it's to keep the interior cooler. Maybe it's to protect the leather. Maybe it's to hide valuables, right? If I store a computer on my back seat, window tint might keep a potential theft from happening. So there's a lot of useful reasons to have things like window tint. If we move into wheels, tires, and suspension, this one becomes a little more subjective again, because you'll see people jack their pickup trucks, 18 inches up in the air, put 44-inch mud tires on there, and never take the thing off the street. Is that usable? I mean, it could be, I suppose, but is that why someone did that mod? No, in a lot of cases it's not. A lot of people just want the look. A lot of the time people are really just trying to, have a taller truck than the next guy or a bigger truck than the next guy, right? So suspension is subjective, but go to a race car and you're going to see adjustable coilovers and, something that's dialed in and tuned to go fast, whether it be in a straight line or through the curves. Move into air suspension, purely aesthetic. There's no, other than maybe a softer ride, depending on the setting you're in, there's no real function, not function, what's the word? There's no real benefit, maybe, to having air ride. It is a look that people want. And I love air ride. I think it's fantastic. I do. Currently don't have any cars with air suspension, but they're very cool when you do. You can adjust the height up and down. It's completely modifiable. You're going over a speed bump, you hit the button, the car rises, you go over, and you can lower yourself right back down. That's a function of it. But for the most part, usually air ride is so that you can get yourself way, way down. And, it's more of a show than a go thing, right? So that. Other suspension mods, again, coilovers that are adjustable up and down, that's functional, because there's a reason you may want to, for daily driving sake, keep the car up a little bit. If you track your car, maybe you want to lower it a little bit. If you have aftermarket wheels and tires and you're trying to fill a wheel well, you want to bring the car down a little bit. Again, aesthetics, but still functional. Moving into engine mods, right? You're going to see things like headers, downpipes. You're going to see things like air intakes, maybe even superchargers, turbochargers. All those things generally will add a benefit to the car from a performance standpoint. It's not super common that someone's putting a turbocharger on their car just because they want an intercooler to show out the front. Usually there's a performance aspect to that. And then more than that, then it goes out the exhaust, and you've got to have an upgraded exhaust system, right? That's like the one mod that came on my R8 was an aftermarket titanium exhaust, and the thing sounds amazing. Still sounded really good stock. I've heard stock R8s before. They still sound amazing, but this aftermarket titanium exhaust is even better. So, there's some function there. A performance exhaust does help alleviate the engine of deposits and things like that. You're blowing out all that extra exhaust, maybe through a wider diameter pipe. Maybe not. It just sort of depends on the system. And again, it can become objective. But then you can get into the really objective ones like neon underglow, or, maybe internally of the car, the insides of the car, you're having a sound system. What else? Those kind of things where people modify their cars and many times pay thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to have a custom audio system or video system set up in their car. And, other than for that particular person, there's no real added benefit. And so I did an episode, a couple months ago about modifications and things hurting the value of the vehicle in some cases. Other times, maybe helping hold retail or resale value of a vehicle. Very seldom do mods increase the value. But you know what? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And if somebody is selling an 18-inch lifted pickup and it's sitting right next to a stock pickup, the desirability of the lifted one in my area is going to be great. People are going to generally want a lifted truck over a stock truck and might be willing to pay a hair more if they're exactly the same mileage, same make, same brand, same color, whatever. Someone might pay an extra $500 or $1,000 to have that truck pre-lifted as opposed to the stock truck. But at the same time, sometimes people want to do that work, or they want a custom lift, or they want to do it on their own. So they'll buy the stock truck and then pay that $1,000 out of pocket, but then have the lift they want, and then they can do it all themselves or whatever it is. So yeah, modifications are a tricky part of the auto life. I would say that the average enthusiast doesn't necessarily keep their stuff stock for very long. I'm sure there's a stat out there with how quick people modify their cars, how much money they spend on modifications and all those things. But yeah, I was just driving around town. I'm in my truck right now and noticing that there's just so many different ways you can go with your vehicle. So I think one really common mentality when it comes to modifications is just to sort of slap on as much stuff as you can to compete with the next guy. Everybody wants to keep up with the Joneses. Everybody wants to outdo one another. And so, if you've got a wing on the back of your Civic, I want a bigger one. If you've got a lift on your pickup, I want a bigger one, or I want a taller one. Or if your car's lowered, I want to be lower. And a lot of the time people tend to lose sight of the functionality of an actual modification and wreck their car. I've seen, and I've done this, I've seen people that have cut their springs to get their car way low. Depending on the car, you can't do that, right? Some cars you can and get away with it. Others you can't and shouldn't. It becomes dangerous. And those are things that you learn along the way. But, it's one thing to build a vehicle on a budget and put these mods on a car on a budget. And then there's, just throwing money away by doing silly things. I digress and say that, again, this is all subjective to me. There's a couple other silver Raptors in town. I'm in my truck and, my truck is stock. I've got aftermarket wheels and tires on here, and that's about it. From looking at the truck outside, nobody can really tell it's mine. It's very, very just generic looking for a Raptor. Now, does that make it good or bad? I would say it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If I park next to a standard F-150, okay, I'm taller, I'm bigger, I've got bigger tires, I've got more wheel well space, I've got Fox shocks, right? I've got all the Raptor stuff that a standard F-150 won't have. But if I park next to another Raptor, it's just another Raptor. So I don't know. I haven't modified this truck at all, really, at all. I've done a few maintenance things. I've upgraded a couple things. Headlights and taillights on this truck are aftermarket. I didn't do those. They came that way. And it's not something that I would have spent probably money on. LED headlights and taillights, or taillights LED, and then the xenon projector, HID headlights. That's all fine and dandy. I don't know what stock headlights this truck came with. I know what they would have come with. There were two options, right? Halogen or LED or HID. I'm not sure which this truck had, and I don't really care because it didn't come with either of them. It came with aftermarket projectors, which are great headlights, but I don't think I would have gone out of my way to buy them on my own. So, that's a mod that to me is somewhat worthless. What would have been cool is if somebody had supercharged this truck. I would have paid a lot more for it, but that would have been really cool. Some of these trucks came supercharged from the factory, and that's, the main option that I don't have. This truck's fully loaded, but I don't have a supercharger. That's all right. I can always do that down the line if I choose to. Will I? Probably not. But, same with my R8. There's a lot of guys that supercharge their R8s or twin turbo their R8s. Those are mods that are great. But again, it's more for the individual who owns it and less for everybody else. Unless you know what you're looking at, you'll never know that supercharger was $10,000 or whatever it cost. So all that to say, mods are subjective. Some are good, some are bad. It's all good. Whatever you're into, fantastic. I think building a car, modifying a car, it's a reflection of you and who you are. And I think that's important. Driving down the road, every so often I'll giggle and my wife will remind me, to each their own, right? That's the truth of it, is when someone builds a car, it is a reflection of them. It has nothing to do with, status. It has nothing to do with, maybe it has something to do with budget, but it has nothing to do with, the life that person is trying to live. It's, more or less the reflection of who that person is, who that person hangs out with, and maybe to some small piece, who they're trying to impress. I don't know. I just, everybody's different. Everybody's got a different mindset, and everybody's, again, budget and vision is different from one vehicle to the next. And when I build a car, I build it for me. I don't build it for you. I don't build it for my wife. I don't build it for anybody else. I build it based on what I want and what I like. And I do a lot of research. So I find online what I like, and then I do my best to do it the same. And, I would say that maybe once upon a time, building a car to impress somebody, a friend or whatever it is, I don't know. I think we've all been there. But I can't really think of a time that I've had a car that I built for anybody else. It's always been what I wanted and the way I could do it best. So I don't know. I'm certainly not here to judge. Please don't take this for anything more as an objective opinion. But I think that there's times and places for certain modifications, and it just depends on where you're at and what you're going for. So keep that in mind. The money spent on all this, again, I'm just going to close with that, is there are mods you can do to your car that just wreck the value. And I don't know a good example off the top of my head. I would say cutting springs is probably the best example that comes to mind. Is if you cut your springs and ride around, your shocks are going to wear out, your suspension's going to be bouncy or super firm, depending on how you cut them and where you cut them and how deep you cut them. But those kind of things can wreck the value of your vehicle. And so don't do those kind of things and expect your value to maintain. Don't do those types of mods on a vehicle you're looking to sell anytime real soon. Don't do it for anybody but yourself. That's kind of the takeaway, is you do you, to each their own. Whatever you're into, build your car that way. Make it a reflection of you. Don't build it for somebody else. Don't build it because, you're trying to add value to the car. There's only so much you can do to do those types of things. And you have to kind of go into that project knowing that that's your plan, right? I've done that a million times. Yeah, I go into a vehicle knowing I'm going to sell it. So I base my modifications strategically on that to maximize the return and maximize the dollar. But on regular cars that I'm going to keep and drive and love, I'm a lot more selective in what I'm doing to them. And I'm not necessarily spending excess money on things that I, just to build it. I'd rather keep that money in the bank or invest it or whatever. And so that's all I got. But I'd love to hear from you guys. What have you done in your car building times and days that, you loved? Maybe you hated, maybe you regretted, maybe, you'd do again. Comment down below, let me know, or send me an email. I want to hear from you guys. I appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Thank you so much for subscribing and hitting those like buttons. my audience has grown. I love it. I'm watching all the analytics and I appreciate it. Thank you. So with that, final parting words, may every investment you make be a good one. Till next time.